right, testing 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3. Looks like we're back. All right, testing 1, 2. There it is. All right. Just wait a few seconds here and we'll get right into it. Got a lot to cover here. We're still on page, excuse me, page 24. That's where we're going to begin here. Page 24 of 170. So still have a long ways to go. Let me see if I can put this in. Let's focus. Well, there we go. I like that. It's a good way to put it. Help us focus a little bit. Oh, look at that. Invisible enemy number 3. I've already covered some of the very early days of this, or the early struggle that I had here with a lot of this stuff, and we haven't even made it to March 23rd. So, but for anybody who's new to this or doesn't know this, we're just going to cover. I guess I could show my face here for a second. There we are. Ah, you found me. That's pretty cool. All right, kind of testing out this. So we'll see how well this goes here. But yeah, so this is episode number 3, and we are going to go over the early days of COVID. This is based on 170 pages of the book that I have ready to go, maybe not ready to go, on the early days of COVID-19. I thought it was very important to try to document this for my family, for my friends, for the future generations of this country, of this nation, so everybody knows exactly what happened and what didn't happen. I think that's going to be a big thing as we move forward here. So let me just see if I can center this out. So we talked about Rand Paul. The last thing that we covered in part 2 is Rand Paul did get COVID-19, but he was asymptomatic, which is pretty interesting when you think about it, because we're still having that. So it's like people don't even know, they didn't even know that they were testing, or that they would test positive without any symptoms. So it brings up the question about false positives, things like that. I have a cold. I'm just getting over a cold. It's just a cold, just a head cold. Nothing I haven't gotten any other year, so no big deal there. But we're going to continue here, page 24. And I may add this to my website, whatistruth911.wordpress.com. So if anybody wants to go back and look at some of this stuff, there may be some typos, or maybe just some random notes, things like that. But at least you'll be able to kind of see where I was coming from. Kind of, if there's anything that you watch in this video or in the past 2 episodes that you'd like to learn more about, it would be nice to have, so you can actually go and find this document that I'm reading from here and pull out those certain things. Some of the articles that I mentioned in the last 2 shows, I do have offline in PDF form, just because you know how things go, and things get scrubbed. So we talked about the guy, the Santa Clara, the first case in the Bay Area, and how that guy went. And that guy died, unfortunately. And he went to Florida for a business trip, came back, and they put him on a ventilator. So, and he passed away. And that's kind of what I thought is like, when we talk about this COVID thing now, and it's like, well, unless I'm on a ventilator, I'm not really going to worry about it. I'm more worried about the vaccination, and when people are getting the shot and then they're having heart complications, passing out, and in some cases dying after having that shot. So there's still a lot of things that need to be done about that, but forcing it at this stage is crazy. Forcing it, period, is completely nuts. But forcing people to try to get the shot at this stage is pretty crazy, I would think. So I'm glad that the Supreme Court did fight back a little bit against Biden and some of the things Biden was trying to do, but I guess we can go ahead and get right into this. So I will switch this. This is what's nice about two screens here, having two screens. Oh, I don't even know if you guys probably can't even see me there, huh? So what do I have to do? Do I have to move this here or something? No. Let's see. Transition. Transition. Oh, look at that. There we go. So I've been talking all this time and nobody has been able to see me, but that's okay. Not a big deal, but you can see me now. I'm just kind of jumping in here. Been sick, so I lost a couple pounds, and definitely got my Bullet Club shirt on just for all you wrestling fans here. But nothing is going to stop us from the truth, from getting to the truth, and from continuing to focus on this. And I'm not someone who believes that the COVID is a hoax or that it's completely real either. And I know people have it, people have gotten it, people have died from it, but it does seem like it's a very small percentage of people that have actually died from it when you look at it. But back in March of 2020, they were making it seem like if you get COVID, you will pretty much die. So the ventilators, they ordered all of those because that's what they were doing, putting people on those, and it helped in some cases. In a lot of cases, it probably helped, but then after a couple weeks, the ventilators, you don't really hear that much about them now. So are people still getting sick going on the ventilators and then dying or getting better from it? It's all about the flu shot, the COVID shot. That's what we see more of now. So that's what we'll be kind of focusing on here. So let me transition. Oh, I like that. I like how I can easily just transition back and forth between this. So I'm using OBS software. I'm still kind of new to it now that I have a second screen. It's pretty cool to have. So um, we will continue reading on here as well. And thank you all for joining, and thank you all for re-watching this. And I don't go live that much on this channel, but we are live right now, and I do appreciate everybody here, everybody watching. And I'm gonna plug in my second audio if I have it. I guess I don't have it. Oh, here it is. It fell on the ground. So anyways, if you notice any audio issues, I'll try to monitor that from time to time. Otherwise, we'll just continue moving along here. Sounds all right. Yeah, it doesn't sound too bad. Okay, so let's continue on here. Free testing in Hayward, California, March 23rd, 2020. The COVID-19 testing center at Hayward Fire Station, number 7,28270 on Huntwood Avenue, will open daily from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and will be managed by a Hayward firefighter, paramedics, and EMT. It's free and open to anyone regardless of immigration status, the city said Sunday. This is from an article, I can tell. Up to 370 people a day will be tested. A city spokesman, Chuck Finney, said Hayward police will be on hand to control traffic, but that he hopes that there won't be an unnecessary rush. Let me fix that typo right now while I'm here. To get the tests. The goal is to prioritize health care workers and people who are already ill, he said. So that makes sense, right? That's what you would want to do in a situation like this. Now we're in the stage where that's not what's happening. Everybody needs to get tested. Everybody needs to have a vaccine, and we're being punished if we don't want to take one. And I'm one of those people who does not want to take one. Definitely, I don't support it being forced. If it works, people will do it. If it only works, if everybody does it, then it doesn't work. So, let's see. We want sick people to come. He said we want the wondering and the worried to stay home and continue to shelter in place. So remember March 23rd, where everybody was sheltering in place. That was the big thing. Shelter in place, shelter in place, shelter in place. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Never understood how you can flatten the curve, but then if you look at the graphs, then you understand what they're talking about. They want to flatten that. Let's see, what are we, 2 years later now? So Hayward officials partnered with Avellino Lab USA Inc. in Menlo Park, which will process the test kits in as little as 6 hours or the next day. So this is what those painful kits, where they were shoving them up your nose into your brain almost. Suppression through isolation after testing, or SIT as we call it, is an approach that has proven to be most effective in countries on the leading edge of this pandemic, Hayward Fire Chief Garrett Contreras said in a news release Sunday. Every driver who pulls up to the testing site will be asked a series of questions, such as whether they traveled recently or if they've had contact with someone who has the virus. So, I mean, this is a lot better than people coming down, knocking on your door and asking you these things, right? This is a voluntary thing where people are fleeing to these sites, wanting to make sure that they don't have it. Of course, if somebody has it in that area and you go down there, you may have an issue. But it's more, it's people who already feel like they have it, people who think that they have this virus, et cetera, et cetera. But then it says those who qualify for the testing will they get screened for fever, cough, shortness of breath, and respiratory issues, among other symptoms. The test includes swabbing of the nasal cavities and the back of the throat. Ooh, the city said. We want to take the pressure off emergency rooms and want to get quick answers to people who are health workers and emergency responders. So that's what this is really for. Now, at that time, on March 23rd, 2020, there were 68 coronavirus cases in Alameda County, the county that I'm living in. Tatiana Sanchez is a San Francisco Chronicle. Okay, so that's the article there. So this article, I pulled this from firehouse.com. So that is the article there if anybody wants to go and check that out to see what's going on there. So with that in mind, I'm just going to pull this up a little bit. Okay, now we have the first case of homeless in Santa Clara, which is pretty interesting because expected that to happen a lot with the homeless. So on March 17, 2020, the first known death among the homeless in California was recorded in Santa Clara County. We're accelerating efforts to identify motels and other locations where we can move folks as soon as possible, as soon as the testing indicates that we need to get them out and away from others, says Mayor Sam Lucardo. So March 17th, that's when they have the first known death of homeless people. I put here first case, but it should be really first known death among the homeless related to coronavirus. So they say. So we get a lot of this across the whole nation at this time. Things dropping, people dropping like flies, and this and that, and it just seemed like a bigger problem than what we would find out later on. So now we're going to move on to 25, page 25 here, national emergency. So here we go. This is the national emergency here. From President Trump, from his speech on March 18, 2020, probably a press briefing, most likely. I would like to begin by announcing some important developments in our war against the Chinese virus, said President Trump. We'll be invoking the Defense Production Act just in case we need it. In other words, I think you all know what it is, and it can do a lot of good things if we need it. And we will. We will have it all completed, signed in just a little bit. Right after I'm finished with this conference, I'll be signing it. It's prepared to go. So we will be invoking the Defense Production Act. All right. Pretty interesting. Last week, President Trump continued, I signed an emergency declaration under the Stafford Act, which, as you may know, we invoked previously, and which activated FEMA's National Response Coordination Center. FEMA is now fully engaged at the highest levels. Today, FEMA is activated in every region. We are at level 1 being the highest level, which we'll work with, and we've been working with FEMA. I've done a lot of work with FEMA. So that is from the whitehouse.gov, press briefing statements. I don't know if those are still out there right now or not, but the Defense Production Act is what this was all focused on. And they start to do a lot of different things here at this time. It's still kind of a little chaotic, but remember these dates here, okay? These are very important dates, March 18th. And the war, I think this is what a lot of people did not like, which is the war against the Chinese virus. And of course, we covered that in the first episode. Why does he call it the Chinese virus? And he says because it came from China. So you can see what his view is. I know some people think it came from a U.S. military base or something, but we know it was in China for sure. And if you look at the Chinese numbers, the stats on the World O Meter website, you can clearly see there's something wrong with the Chinese numbers there. Right to try. Here we go. The medical establishment has never really liked the right to try for anything, right? If they want to focus things that they're just trying out and just testing out that they're getting started on. So that's kind of weird too. I always thought that was pretty strange. Okay, so we're going to look at a man named Rio Giardineri. Of course, I'm going to butcher that name. After Rio Giardineri tested positive for COVID-19, his condition worsened quickly. Giardineri, probably Giardineri, whatever, had a fever for 9 days. He experienced severe back pain, headaches, and fatigue. Once he began treatment with hydroxychloroquine, almost all his symptoms were gone. He took the last dose of hydroxychloroquine about an hour before speaking with Laura Ingraham on March 23rd, 2020. So this again is anything Trump is cool with. The media is going to just try to blast him on it. So if it works, it works. That's the main thing. If this worked for this person, it could work for other people. The right to try is very important at that point, especially so early on when people don't know anything that is going on about this. And when you read Robert F. Kennedy's book, The Real Anthony Fauci, Anthony Fauci is one of those guys who was basically trying to stop some of these right to try things because it was all about business, right? This was cutting into the business, cutting into the things that they wanted, that the big pharma wanted. Okay, so he says, I'm not a scientist, he told Laura Ingraham. I'm not a doctor, but I know when I'm sitting here in pain and they've tried all kinds of antibiotics sorting through me and I continue to get worse. My breathing became worse. Speaking became difficult. And a friend of mine from a prayer line reached out, a friend of 43 years, and says, Hey, I saw this on Laura Ingraham's show. You need to take this medicine and you need to ask your doctor to give it to you now. Now, Giardineri asked his doctor about hydroxychloroquine, but the doctor said he couldn't prescribe it. But, he continues, he did put me in touch with the infectious disease doctor who said, yes, Rio, I know what you're talking about. We've all seen it online. There's no trials, there's no studies, there's no guarantees this will work for you, and it could possibly hurt you. My feeling at that particular time was that I thought I was at the end of my rope, and I didn't see any other options. For me, it was a risk worth taking. So this is this is one of those positive cases here. And he says, aside from a headache, which lasted a few days, he felt fantastic. All the other symptoms were completely gone. So here you have something that works. This guy was willing to be a guinea pig, was willing to pretty much test it out and see if this would work for him. And it did. It did work. And so why not continue it? That's why people started running to it. And, it was hard to find at that point. And I know there was a lot of reasons why it seemed like people didn't want to do it. I think because Trump came out for it, I think that was a big thing too. So this saved this guy's life. Hydroxychloroquine. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to pronounce that correctly, but it saved this guy's life here. It works. Here you have a case where it works. So again, it's not the cure-all. It's not the thing. Doesn't mean it's just that it's going to work for everyone. But if it worked for him, why not try it? Why not let people try it and see if it works for them too, right? That's what I would think. So now we're going to move on to Prince Charles. On March 23rd, 2020, Prince Charles tested positive for COVID-19 but was said to be in good health. According to reports, the Queen was not infected but was in contact with her son on March 12th. I'm just going to change that typo right there. So she was in contact with Prince Charles on March 12th. On 23rd, Prince Charles tests positive. As far as we know, the Queen did not test positive. But then all goes back to the thing, like I was saying, I think in episode one or episode two, like if Trump tested positive back then, would they really tell us? If the Queen tested positive, would they really tell us? Prince Charles, nobody really seems to care about him, so that was not a big surprise that they would let that go out, but it was pretty interesting that the Queen didn't. And we've seen that where the virus kind of attacks certain people and not other people. I always found that fascinating. Um, okay, the Prince of Wales has tested positive for coronavirus, according to Communications Secretary for the Prince of Wales, Julian Payne. He has been displaying mild symptoms but otherwise remains in good health. The Duchess of Cornwall, wife of Prince Charles, tested negative. Both are self-isolating at their home in Scotland. That's the other thing. Like again, here we have two people, a princess, the Duchess, and one tests positive, the other doesn't. Now there could be many reasons for that. Maybe they're not as close as we all think or want to think that a husband and a wife should be, but for whatever reason, he tested positive. These two women didn't. But the other thing is that his symptoms were mild too, and he was in pretty good health. So kind of like Rand Paul. Um, Pretty interesting. It is not possible, Payne continued in the statement, to ascertain from whom the prince caught the virus, owing to the high number of engagements let me read that again. It is not possible to ascertain from whom the prince caught the virus owing to the high number of engagements he carried out in his public role during recent weeks. So he was around a lot of people. He could have caught it from a number of people in those weeks, and he could have infected people in those 2 weeks. Had he in those 2 weeks had he been around the Duchess, his wife? Had he been around his mom, the Queen, or not? Um, Pretty interesting there. And that's from Fox News article. That's under entertainment. That's kind of weird. I just thought that was weird. Um, I guess we'll go on to March 24th, 2020 here. Here's an interesting one. March 24th, 2020, Trump participated in a live town hall meeting about the coronavirus on March 24th, 2020. We had the best economy in the history of our country 3 weeks ago, President Trump said. Then all of a sudden we're supposed to shut it down, and then we're supposed to pay people not to go to work. We never had that. We used to pay people to go to work. So he admits he's shutting the country down, but even as early as March 24th, 2020, you can see he's like not really happy with shutting everything down and paying people to not go to work, which a lot of people were getting incentives to go on uh, unemployment. I remember I had to go on unemployment. Our job had to cut back, and we were part time. I was part time working from home, and it's true. I was making more money working from home for a certain point um, because of the money that I was getting from the unemployment was more than I was making. It's crazy. It's really nuts. And that didn't last for forever. It lasted for a couple months or something, 5 6 months or something like that. But for that time, it's like wow, I'm actually staying at home, um, only working part time and making more. Like how can and we're in this debt. We have so much debt. How can that be? So it really shut down the economy. Anything that President Trump was doing at that point is pretty much gone because now we have all of this newfound debt now. It's crazy. I mean, that's why I really do attribute some of this coronavirus partially as an attack on Trump, um, to ruin the economy and the timing is interesting too, right? Look at this timing here. So, whatever, we'll keep going on. President Trump was also asked about the $2 trillion bill Congress was negotiating. I canceled the deal last night, President Trump responded. I said, I'm not going to sign that deal because Nancy Pelosi came in and put a lot of things in the deal that had nothing to do with the workers. They always do that, you know that. That had nothing to do with an agenda that had to do with an agenda that they've been trying to get passed for 10 years. You know, we almost had a deal the day before, and it was between Schumer and Mitch. It was really a good, solid deal. All of a sudden, they start throwing in the little Green New Deal stuff. Now they've renegotiated. So that's what happens, right? I mean, we've seen that happen so many different times. That's why a lot of people have lost faith in the government or just in the Congress and the bills that they create, et cetera, et cetera. We have to remember we are the government. The people are the government. Whether you want to be involved or not, the people are speaking for you. So we need to stay involved at some level, at some point. Um, and so he talks about Nancy Pelosi, who kind of started throwing in stuff with the Green New Deal, and they're still doing that with this thing that the new bills that they're pushing and everything. They're still trying to push all of that Green New Deal stuff in there. Okay, so tucked into page 148 of roughly 1,400-page bill, wrote Justin Caruso, the Daily Caller reporter. Nancy Pelosi's coronavirus bill gives 300 million to refugees and to migrants. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous because why it doesn't make any sense. First of all, if you have a pandemic, you have something like this, and you shut everything down. If you're stopping me from going to work, you're telling us to stay at home, shelter in place, but then you're going to bring in the refugees, the whole migrants. You're going to put in all of that stuff in there. Like that has nothing to do with what the bill should be. And we see this, right? We see this happen way too much, way too many times. So you can look at that. That's from the Daily Caller, 3/24/2020. Now, because of I'm still getting over a little flu here, and my voice is a little raspy. I'll stay on as long as I can, as much as I can, but may need to take a little sip of water from time to time here. Regarding shutting down the country, I wasn't happy about it, said President Trump. I also knew that I had to do it. It's been very painful for our country and very destabilizing for our country. We have to go back to work. People can go back to work and they can also practice good judgment. So even as early as March 24th, 2020, he's already saying we need to get back to work, right? President Trump also commented on when he would like to see the country reopen. I remember this. He got hammered by the lamestream media for all this. He said, "I'd love to have it open by Easter. I would love to have the country opened up and just raring to go by Easter." That would have been April 12th, 2020. Now, when it didn't open up, they were like, "Oh, he couldn't do it. He couldn't open up, et cetera, et cetera." But he says, "We want to focus testing on people that have symptoms." Vice President Pence added during the town hall meeting. 90% of the people that have been tested for the coronavirus don't have it. We've tested more than 320,000 people, and that's an encouraging number. If you don't have symptoms, don't do a test. It's a pretty good advice, I would think, because there are a lot of people running out of fear with the media. What the media was telling us, we're all going to die from this, and they made it seem so horrible that everybody started trying to go and get tested. Those are probably the same people that stood in line to get the vaccination first. Could be some of the same people that were buying toilet paper. Nobody else could get any. Just a guess there. Just a guess. That's a lot for March 24th, 2014. So here's something else. According to a March 24th article by Tim O'Donnell, posted in theweek.com, an Oxford study led by Oxford theoretical epidemiologist Sunetra Gupta suggests the pandemic is in a later stage than previously thought and estimates the virus has already infected at least millions of people worldwide. In the United Kingdom, which the study focuses on, half the population would have already been infected. If accurate, that would mean transmission began around mid-January, and the vast majority of cases presented mild or no symptoms. Now, I can attest to that a little bit. I did get pretty sick during that time, but again, it's just a cold. It's nothing new for me. I don't know, I'm not saying I ever had it. I don't think that I ever had it because everything that I had, even what I just had a couple of days ago, and I'm still kind of fighting off, feeling much better, but everything that I had is nothing new. It's nothing that I haven't had in the past. And I had my adenoids taken out when I was a kid, so getting sick every year is not that big of a deal for me. After a while, you just kind of deal with it. You figure out a way to just deal with it. You know it's coming. I know when it's going to come, usually between Thanksgiving and now, and I just prep for it, try to do my best. But maybe one year it may not hit me. It hit me around this time. Around that same time. But I didn't, yeah, like it says, mild or no symptoms. So nobody really knows if you have it, if you haven't had it. But I mean, they were also blaming all of the dead cases. Remember, we were hearing, I'm sure we'll get to that too. A lot of the cases of the people that were dying had pre-existing conditions. It's one of the many reasons why I don't want to get the shot because if you have pre-existing conditions, why would you want to expose yourself to the coronavirus? The virus is in the shot. Don't get the shot if you don't know what is in it. I mean, that should be just rule number one. I don't eat anything. I don't drink anything unless I know what is in it, right? It's on every label. They put all the you can read on the back of an ingredients label. And sometimes it's really bad. There's so much of this stuff. I don't know what it means, but at least I can read it and I can see what is in it, and then I don't eat it. Or if I do, then that's on me. But there's way too much trust in the vaccination, I think. Way too much trust. Unwarranted trust. That trust has to be built, right? And I think that's why they wanted the leaders to get it. That's why they wanted Trump to take the shot. They wanted the sports players, your idols, the people that you look up to, movies, theater, all that stuff. You still see it. It's all we are in this together, all that stuff, right? Because they knew that you were not going to just take it on your own. It wasn't going to happen. Not at the numbers that they were hoping. But even this article here, the week article, it's like a million, you know, at least millions of people worldwide by January. Um, Interesting, pretty interesting. So let's see here. As of March 24th, 2020, the Department of Defense announced 227 cases among United States soldiers. That same day, a United States Marine stationed inside of the Pentagon tested positive for COVID-19. That's from the militarytimes.com. So that's a good article there. I think I took a little bit. Um, there was a lot more that I could have included in that article. It was interesting, but it was hitting everybody and hitting kind of randomly too. I thought that was curious, to say the least. All right, next. Oops. Okay, next. The Marine worked at the Marine Corps Plans, Policies, and Operations Office. Per U.S. Centers for Disease Control guidelines, Marine Captain Monica Witt stated, the Marine is in isolation at his home and will undergo further assessment by health professionals. The Marine followed official guidance by isolating himself when his spouse began to show symptoms. Once he became ill, he contacted his assigned medical facility. His workspace has been cleaned by a Pentagon response team, and a thorough contact investigation is underway to mitigate risk and preserve the health of our Marines, civilians, and families. So it was like all these articles, they got it. They're testing positive. How many of them were actually dying? How many of them? And those numbers will come up. That's I wish I should have started documenting those numbers earlier. I can tell I hadn't yet, but at some point in this 175 page PDF, I do start documenting those numbers to try to keep up with it because they're pretty interesting. The way that the news articles were kind of being written and all that, and I don't watch like CNN. I didn't watch Fox. The only reason why I would watch Fox is if Trump was on there, if Tucker Carlson or something like that. Sean Hannity, I started watching him, which was kind of interesting because his view on the war and everything, his view on September 11th, a lot of that stuff, I was totally anti. Back in 2000, I was a Clinton Democrat, and I thought I wanted Al Gore to win in 2000. I was very anti-Bush, very anti-Bush too, very anti-Republican in general. Um, and Ron Paul really helped me, change that view. I really wish he would have ran. Ron Paul would have ran as a third party, but whatever. I get it. It's still the two party system, and it's still there. And Trump. That's the only way that he won too, was to join one of the two parties. And I thought he would choose the other party, the Democrat Party, but that's all sewed up. So that's pretty much, the Clinton and Obama and the Biden, it's all the same people. And you look at when they have these people in office, it's all the same. So who they put in there. And Trump really failed with a lot of people too, I think. He put a lot of people in office in his cabinet in places that he shouldn't have. And he's talked about that. He's admitted that that there was a lot of people that he surrounded himself with. We always have to be careful about that too, who you surround yourself with. You can tell my voice is going out. So we'll do a few more. We're still on March 24th, and we're on page 29. Also on March 24th, the Department of Defense reported 3 sailors were diagnosed with COVID-19. The sailors were aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt. Acting Navy Secretary Thomas B. Maudley stated, "We've identified all the folks they've had contact with, and we're quarantining them as well." This is an example of how we are able to keep our ships deployed at seas and underway, even with active COVID-19 cases. Our force remains on watch throughout the world during this crisis, and they're continuing to execute the primary mission under the National Defense Strategy. Oh, look at this. Finally made it to March 25th. March 25th, 2020, the Department of Defense enacted a 60-day stop movement order for the DoD, for all DoD uniformed and civilian personnel and their sponsored family members overseas. This measure is taken to aid in further prevention of the spread of coronavirus disease 2019 to protect U.S. personnel and preserve the operational readiness of our global force. Global force, building up previously enacted movement restrictions governing foreign travel, permanent change of station moves, temporary duty, and personal leave. This stop movement order will also impact exercises, deployments, redeployments, and other global force management activities. Approximately 90,000 service members slated to deploy or redeploy over the next 60 days will likely be impacted by the stop movement order. So I think I'll stop there for now, and we'll come back and we'll get in. But now we're getting into a lot of more of the different global things here that are going to happen. And I do try to document as pretty much everything that Trump says, every speech that he does from this point. I make sure to watch the whole thing, write notes, document it, come back, live stream it if I can, replay it if I don't live stream it, and try to add that to this book here. So, all right, my friends and my folks, God bless you all. And I really appreciate you taking the time to tune in here on this bright sunny day. And until next time, I will see y'all then. God bless.